Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Well, I hope you brought your coffee with you today, so I'm going to do a little bloviating. That's why this is a rambling Russ. Now, I want to talk about sanding blocks and strategies, and so I'm looking for new ideas for some different sanding blocks out there. So I thought I'll share with you kind of the different ones I use in my shop and how I use them a little bit, and then maybe you can show me some of the ones or tell me about some of the ones you use, and I'll pick up a new sanding block somewhere, because I have a wide variety of what I use for sanding blocks. So anyway, before I do that, real quick, on my last video, there was a gentleman out there, StevesFascinations, and it's a great little channel. And he left me a message about where to find the rulers I was looking for. They're on Amazon. I'll leave a link to these where I bought them. They're $9 for the pair, 112 and 1 6-inch. And believe it or not, the 6-inch one fit right on my little T-bar that I use for my other 6-inch rulers. And it just fits on this thing just perfect. I'm really pleased with it. So anyway, this was a good find. And I want to thank Steve over there for giving this to me. In fact, you should probably check out his channel. He has some pretty interesting tips over there. He's kind of like my channel. He goes, you never know what he's going to talk about from one video to the next. He does a lot of different things, but he's always got these little tidbits everywhere. So you got to watch the whole video just to get that little tidbit sometimes. So go check him out. Like I said, I'll leave a link in there. I think I'm going to put him on my favorite channels on my homepage on YouTube also, so that he put him on that list there. So if you really want to check it out, it's worth your while, I think. So anyway, thanks, Steve. So anyway, let's go back and let's talk about the sanding blocks. So for years and years, you can go out and buy sanding blocks like this. I have like 5 or 6 of these with different grits on them. I thought that was the way to go. But I have to tell you, first off, I don't really like the sanding paper being loose. I really prefer it being glued down to the surface that I'm sanding, so that when I go to the backing of whatever I'm using to sand. I know sometimes you'll take a piece and they'll just wrap sandpaper around it and then sand with it. And again, for a pinch, that works pretty well. But to be honest with you, I have sandpaper, little sanding blocks everywhere, so I can just grab one and do a little bit of sanding if I need to do some shaping or something. So this one here, they're okay, but they really have found out I don't hardly use these at all anymore. And you may have some of these, I don't know. I also took one, and this one is just an old sanding handle for drywall sanding. And it has those replaceable, I forget what they call them, things on there. And I just put sandpaper on it, and this works for a good flat surface. This works really well. Put it in upside down in the vise and gives you a nice flat surface to be able to sand if you want to use it for a hand sanding plane. So it's not too bad. My favorite one, though, like I said, well, let me show you one more real quick of where you put the sandpaper in. I saw a video today where he took 2 pieces of wood about this size and has bolts in between with nuts on them, and he adjusts those nuts back and forth to move these 2 pieces closer together and further apart. So and it's just the right size, so he puts his belt on it, and then he takes a wrench and he tightens them all up, and the 2 pieces pull apart, which tightens up the belt onto them. And then he can use that to sand with on the surface and on the edges. That's okay, but I don't know. It just seemed like it was an awful lot of work just to change that thing out. Me, I just prefer actually just gluing it to it, and then when I'm done, I can just throw it away or something. But as far as using belts, this is the same size belt that I use on my electric belt sander, my hand sander that I have. I don't use it a lot, but I have a lot of sanding belts for it. So I took this, and this is my version of using a belt to make a sanding block. And it just doesn't get any simpler than this. All it is 2 pieces of wood. This one, and it takes a little bit of trial and error till you get it right. But basically, this piece fits in there really tight. And so if I take it apart, I can take this piece off or turn it if I want to turn it to get some new surface here or here. I can turn this thing and put it back together. The one block is whatever length of belt you use. I just did the math and knew it was going to be a little bit more than what this is on the math. And then I took another piece of 3/4 inch and fit that in here. And the reason it gets so tight, if it's too loose, you just make this board longer. The longer you make it, the tighter it'll be when you get it put in, where it pushes on the end here. So if you put your board in there and it's too loose, then you need to cut a new board longer and put it back in. And it's a fine adjustment. Once you get it, then it stays. But that's all I use for my sanding belts, turn them into sanding blocks. And I will tell you, this is a great sanding block at times, because that's nice and tight on there. So I can put this in my vise upside down. This is one of the best little flat sanders you can have out there. It really works well. So for a sanding block, I do that. Now most of my sanding blocks are really smaller. That's really bigger than I normally like to have. And probably this is one of my favorite ones here. I have this one and I have its little brother here. Now his little brother also has a piece of sandpaper on this edge and a piece of sandpaper on this face. And they come to a 90-degree corner here, so that when I get into doing like a dado, if I have to do a dado here, I can take this and put this in here and sand the bottom or sand the side, or if I get it right into the corner, I can get a nice crisp corner using this. And when I get done, I just throw this away and make a new one. It takes about 20 minutes to make something like this. And I just use regular sandpaper by the flat sheet. And they come in 9x11. So, and I just cut pieces away. And then I store all my sandpaper pieces in a little index here, so that if I need scraps to put onto any piece of wood, however I'm making it, I can just grab them out of here. If I don't have what I need in there, and then I get a new sheet and start over. So, but I'm constantly cutting this stuff up and gluing it to different things. But I do prefer gluing it to clamping it or wedging it in place like the other one. So, and again, these are two of my handiest sanders that I use a lot in the shop. When this one in particular, when the sandpaper wears out, I just take and cut another piece on, glue it on there with wood glue again. And then keep going. Eventually, when it gets 3 or 4 sheets on there, then I peel it all off, clean it up, and I start over with a new one. I've used this thing probably for 6, 7, 8 years, and it's worked very well. And like I say, it takes about 20 minutes to renew the sandpaper when I get around to it. So, by far my favorite. I tend to throw these away more than not. So, but they do a great job too when you have them. So it's always handy to have something like that around. Most of my universal sanding, though, that I do, sand belts, I also like to just cut little strips like this out. And this is great for sanding or sanding something round if you want. And so I keep some of this around too. Although this is not a sanding block, but that's kind of my sanding strategy. Probably my most versatile one is right here. I know, that looks weird, doesn't it? That's a full sheet of 120, and that's a full sheet of 80 grit, and it's styrofoam in between. This is 1.5 inch styrofoam. I had a big sheet of it, and I've cut it up a little at a time, doing different things with it. But I'll take and cut up a sheet like this, and then I take this and cut it out to make little sanding blocks that are all over. And I got 2 different grits on them. And I've got them all over, and they're very handy for that. They also make great little cookies, so I can lay these things out and then take something, a larger piece I want to work on, and set it on top, and everything stays put because of the grit. If I'm going to cut through it, and I might cut one of these, you can very easily just take and turn it on its side, like this. Then when you cut through, if it cuts through that, it's not going to hurt anything, and it's not going to bind whatever you're cutting through with, because you're just cutting through styrofoam, really. So these are really handy for little cookies and little stands to put underneath. And yeah, this is kind of a variation of my, world famous styrofoam 2x4. If you remember that one. This is one of the, I think this was the second video I ever put out, my styrofoam 2x4s. This one here is several years old, and it still works very well. I have I have 4 2-footers, 4 4-footers, and then my 5.5 footers I use on my panel saw. And those are made with 3/4 inch plywood, but the others are made with just 1/4 inch. And that's more than durable enough, and they're so light and easy to use, but yet they're very durable. So what I should do is probably put a sandpaper on the back side of this one so that when I can set it this way and use it as a nice sanding plane. So anyway, that's a thought. But mostly I like to do this, and then I take this sheet and I just cut it up into different pieces. And this is probably, and this size here, this is the other. I use these as cookies. Excuse me, but these also are just the perfect size to fit in my hand very comfortably to do sanding. And so I really like these too, but I have these laying all over the place along with these. And I cut them out of this. So, and I do it, when I cut it on the bandsaw, and if I have to clean it up and shave it, then I'll take it either to my chop saw or to the table saw and run it through. And it just cuts it nice and clean and gives you a nice clean edge on the cut. So that's how I make these. And these are, like I said, these are probably my favorite. And they are multitaskers because, like I said, I use them to hand sand. I can use them as little cookies, but also they're little tool holders too. So if I have some tools out and I have these laying around, I keep my tools. If I take this out of my drill, I can then take it and put it right here so I can find it again while I'm working, switching back and forth. Or if I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm done with a little knife and I got to put it somewhere, I can just stick it right in there and it'll be there when I need it. I can just pull it out and use it. And it doesn't hurt this at all. So these are very handy to have around the shop. The styrofoam with the sandpaper. And yes, I have talked about these a long time ago. If you've watched all my old videos, somewhere you heard me talking about these before. But I just wanted to bring this up because this is mostly how I do sanding. And this is most of my hand sanding stuff that I have. Now, I do have a normal sander and a regular half sheet sander and also a belt sander. But when you're hand sanding, you can just grab some sandpaper and do it by hand. But I actually prefer a good solid flat surface when I'm doing my sanding. It just gives you much better control, and the sandpaper doesn't move around on you like it would on something like this. So I've been bloviating now for quite a while. I think that's everything I really wanted to talk about. So I think I'm going to call this video done. I hope you learned something here, but I really am interested in hearing your ideas and how you make some of your weird sandpaper stuff, because I'm looking for some new ideas. I know I should do some round ones, but I have never gotten into making, like taking dowels and gluing pieces to them. That would probably be a pretty tough thing to do. I don't know. But eventually I may want to do something like that, make some round ones. So maybe I get some different sized dowels and do something like that and see how that works. But right now, that's it in a nutshell. So bring your ideas on. I'd love to hear them. Anything here you want to talk about or try to understand a little better, just leave a comment. If you have any new ideas or just want to say hi, just leave it below. I do read them all. And if you learned something here or you like this video, please hit that like button. It lets me know that I'm doing something right. Most importantly, though, please come back again because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.